What's the most small-town thing you've witnessed? My sister and her husband were visiting our grandparents in their super rural farm town. My Bill's family is from Nice, so rural farm life isn't anything he is familiar with. One morning there's an issue with the plumbing. My grandfather picks up the phone line, of course, as this was about 25 years ago, and has the following one-sentence conversation: "Morning, can you come by and take a look at a plumbing issue we're having?" He then hangs up the phone without ever saying who he is or what their house address is. Blew my Bill's minds when someone showed up to the house about 35 minutes later. We had a unit of Army Reserves who got called up early to the Gulf War. It was a transportation unit, so basically one of the riskiest jobs. We lost 5 in our little town. When the unit came home, people lined the route for miles. All the way from the airport to town. Farmers stopped working and would stand in their little groups with flags flying along the way. In town, all the schools went down and lined the route. Every single person in town was out there. I am not a hugely patriotic person, but this was one of the most moving things I have ever witnessed. We brought them home. I hit a deer about a month ago. It didn't die right away, so I called the cops to come and dispatch it. I had already been up and working for 21 hours. So I was exhausted and didn't want to have to run home and grab my rifle. The cop on the phone said he was about 45 minutes and really didn't seem all that interested in dealing with me. He asked if I had a knife on me so I could go and kill the deer myself. Imagine driving by and seeing a grown man covered in blood, holding a knife at the side of the road. I ended up just staying with the deer and comforting it until it finally died. We were having a machine shop, that was located in a small town, make a manufacturing machine for us. They could make the individual parts, but had no idea how everything went together. We sent a mechanic to be on site for several weeks to assemble the machine. First day, he went to the local cafe to get coffee and breakfast. There are several people in there drinking coffee, reading the newspaper, chatting, etc. He goes in and sits at the counter. No one is there to wait on him. Finally, one of the guys says if you want coffee, you'll have to get it yourself. They ain't open yet. In the UK it's different. Some small towns, villages are incredibly welcoming while others are very exclusive. And you never see a better example of either than by walking into a local pub. I went to one by a small rural area, and as I walked to the barman ignored me even though he wasn't busy, and 2 people sat at the bar shifted their stools to get in my way. So I left. But in most other rural pubs, you'll be everyone's best friend within minutes. One guy even wrote a poem about me. It did use the word twat 3 times, but that's term of affection here, I think. The cops just chilling random places chatting with people because they're bored out of their minds. Lived in a bigger city for a bit and you basically never saw police cars just driving around. They were almost always hauling ass somewhere. Meanwhile back home the cops are hanging out at the police station playing cards or kinda just aimlessly wandering around saying hi to people. Or hell, I've even seen them asleep in their cars on the side of the road somewhere. I am convinced being a small town cop is the most mind-numbingly boring job there is. This happened to us recently. We were driving behind a classic car in our small town, and one of the hubcaps came off and rolled away. The car drove on, but we flipped around and picked it up, figuring we'd run into them or be able to track them down and get it back to them. About a month later, we finally happened to find the same car in a parking lot in town. They had their doors unlocked, so we just left their hubcap on their front seat with a little note. Still don't know who they are, but they've got their hubcap back. My father told me this. He was a Marine and was the officer assigned to represent the Marine Corps at a funeral for a Marine. He was running a little behind, and as he drove through the town to church which had the cemetery next to it, he saw a building burning but no fire engines. He mentioned it to the pastor when they got to the church, and the pastor rushed inside and told the firemen who were all there. They had to postpone the service for 2 hours as even the pastor was part of the fire department. I was passing through Mandera, Texas to visit my brother-in-law who was RVing nearby. The local general store grocery store was holding cow patty bingo in the parking lot. A heifer would wander around in a fenced-in area with squares painted all over it on the ground. Wherever the cow droppings landed would be called by an announcer for a game of bingo. Added to add, there were people clinging to the livestock fence anxiously waiting to see where this cow pooped and shouting about it. Where I grew up, kids drive tractors to school and no one shows up on the first day of hunting season. School was always still open, but 60 of students would be hunting. Our hangout spots were the gas station and the train tracks behind the abandoned grocery store. One day last summer, I drove my partner through my hometown because I had never taken them there. A shirtless guy was driving his lawnmower down Main Street with a bottle of beer in his hand and a cigarette in his mouth. I am from a town of roughly 500 people. The primary industry was leather tanning, and the town really peaked in the 1950s. Our school was K-12 and my graduation class was 7. I was one of 2 that went to college. I ended up doing grad school across the country at University of Arizona, and it was an amazing experience, and I'm still out here. When I was home for 4th of July and wearing my university t-shirt, more people that I can count on my hand asked me what Arizona was and where it was. I'm from Montana. Once I was driving down the highway in winter and was stuck behind a cow with 2 bags of salt strapped to its waist, and it was just walking down the road shaking salt onto the surface to melt the ice. There was an old pickup truck in front of the cow with a dog in the back and the tailgate open. Whenever the cow would wander towards the side of the road, the dog would jump out of the tailgate and herd it back, then jump right back into the pickup. Only in Montana. I taught English in a small town in Japan for a couple of years. One day the principal said they were canceling classes for the afternoon so the police could come give a safety talk. As the product of the American school system, I was thinking drugs? Gangs? STDs? Bicycle safety. Some of the students had been seen riding to a bicycle through town. We were reminded that bicycles were for one person only. Also wear your helmet and always signal your moves to drivers. When we moved to a town of about 1,000 people, the local newspaper published our family portrait on the front page to announce a new preacher had arrived. Not a small pic either, it took up easily a 1/6 of the front page. My sisters and I would ride our bikes all over town with our gaggle of friends. Mom would get phone calls from strangers telling her they just saw us, and we were fine. It was just how the moms helped each other keep track of their kids. I am online friends with someone in Vermont. I first visited her when I was 16, she was 15, and the whole town seemed to know I was coming. I remember walking down the street and some old dude stopping us and going, "Oh, is this Covey? Like, how the fuck does this guy and everyone know my name?" Almost felt like I was famous. It was weird, but really eye-opening to the fact that small towns where everyone knows everyone and everything that's happening really exists. Went to a wedding in a small town, like where the venue was at the bride's cousin's property way out in the countryside. While we were all partying afterwards, the noise attracted one of the neighbors. His name was Tater. His family owned a lot of land in the area, and he congratulated my friend's wedding by making it rain on the dance floor and paying the DJ to keep playing. The party was broken up when a pack of feral dogs ran up and scared everyone off. My friend lives outside of a small city only a few miles out, but the street they live on is considered its own community. Anyhow, few of them have business that they help each other with. They borrow each other equipment and help fix them when the equipment breaks down. Almost the whole street will come down whenever they build something. I joke with them that they ring a bell like the Amish do, and the neighbors will come by to help put up a building. My husband and I were traveling throughout Utah a few weeks ago. We're from the East Coast. We were driving and quite literally bumfucking came up on a town, and we were so excited. When we got to the town, there had to be 1,001 ratio of cows to people. Their school was actually their community center, and there was one small cafe. I think the question was different than how I answered it, but it's still fresh in my brain and just blew my mind. I'm 10 at my parents' small hometown for 4th of July, 350 population. They send me to the grocery store down the street for food. I'm in line and the cashier looks at me and goes, "Oh, you're my dad's son. Tell him Barb will be over at 3 when my shift gets over." Never seen her before. Needless to say, she shows up and my father has an impromptu high school reunion because his other 4 classmates also were in attendance. Known criminal, ran for sheriff. Numerous arrests and convictions over his lifetime. His campaign slogan was, "I know the jail inside and out." Edit. Since folks have shown interest, thought I'd add the most recent event. I heard Bert got a DUI on Thanksgiving, so I asked him the next time I saw him what happened. He said, "Mama told me no more drinking at the house. So I went drinking in the truck." The grocery store social hour. In a big city, the store can be packed, but it's basically 100 different individuals groups going about their day. In a small town, half the time, it's hard to get through the aisle because 2 people are chit-chatting. Regularly they both will stop talking to each other to say hi to someone else walking by. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody goes to the grocery store. It happened at my small town bar. It was a busy night and the bartender went up around asking if anyone wanted a drink before she went downstairs to restock some beer. After she came back, this guy started snapping and whistling and bitching at her for being gone for so long. Half the crowd jumped to the waitress's defense and started calling this guy names. He eventually got booed out of the bar. I love my small town people genuinely care about each other and help each other out. Also one day a year it's drive your tractor to school day. And the HS kids bring in sheep and bunnies and horses for the elementary kids to come pet. It's not perfect but I would not trade it and no it's not racist. Half Hispanic half white. We all get along, we even have a taco truck that's as good as anything in LA. I'm not a small town bar for a town festival. A man in his 50s spots a woman of similar age as she walks in. They do not appear to know each other. He approaches her and starts to circle her doing some pro wrestling moves like some kind of weird mating ritual. She's super into it. They start wrestling then and there. He accidentally breaks her arm. She was in the bar for less than 2 minutes, talking to a friend in a parking lot, both in our 20s. Cop pulls in, walks up to us, and says there's a teenager with a knife on the loose. Both of us were kind of taken aback, as that was almost supervillain level crime for our town. The cop got a good chuckle out of it. He said I just got transferred here from. I'm used to people shooting at me, regularly. I grew up in a town of 150 people. Moved away, but I keep in touch. A friend of mine posted a picture on Facebook a few months ago, tagging another friend, "Hey, Bubba, your pig got loose and is running around the Dollar General parking lot. Come get him." People were more surprised that they'd gotten themselves a Dollar General store than they were about Bubba's pig. I hear the receptionist at my job town of 1700 answer the phone and then she calls to me, "Rinky, do you have a specific sticker on your car?" I answer yes. Officer name says don't speed past the high school. Another rural thing is seeing the one on duty state trooper on your way out of town and knowing there won't be another cop on the highway for 150 miles.